Okay. Before we let Dan talk, I'm going to just give us a little background or a little housekeeping again. Just a reminder that we record all sessions, and these sessions will be available from the Kono website. I've given you an idea of what Kono does. Once Dan is done speaking, which will be the bulk of this hour, we will have some time for questions from each of you and from me. We will then have some final remarks from Dan, and I will thank you all for participating. So I think we will get started with this. Dan, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. It's kind of an intimate group, so I'll try to keep it sort of that way. Since you're recording, I'll have to watch which jokes I tell or which stories I tell. Dave was telling Richard that he and I have interacted quite a bit over the years. Richard, that didn't mean that he's been in handcuffs or anything like that. I just want to clarify that. Although I think, Dave, you were a victim, weren't you, of an armed robbery downtown at one point? You had a couple others?
I wasn't, well, I was considered a victim because of the circumstances, but actually the then chief of staff, oh darn, the ex-fire chief, and I witnessed an attempted robbery at knife point, and a bunch of us sort of scared that guy, who I think had to be very high, away, and then Steve chased him down the street, and I thought, I cannot let this friend of mine go down the street unarmed after this guy who's clearly out of his mind. So I chased after Steve, and fortunately nothing happened to either one of us.
Yeah, that was years ago.
Thank you for I can't believe you remember that incident with all the ones that you must have authority over.
Oh, we only have about 36,000 cases a year, so I remember them all. Not a problem at all. But yeah, that was a number of years ago. Otherwise, come on downtown. It's very safe down here. So we are experiencing
it's probably even safer right now. I say it's probably even safer right now.
Very true. Very true. I go down, try to someplace for lunch almost every single day to help out restaurants downtown. And bring stuff home at night. Of course, now they're opening up, so I don't know if anybody's experienced that yet. We're like anybody else. We've been affected to some degree by the COVID that we've got right now. On any given day, about 70 to 80% of my workforce is working from home, but we are considered essential. The courts are still open. And so my deputies have to be in the courtroom in some divisions. Some of them are able to do it by camera. I don't know how many of them have a tie and jacket up top and pajamas on the bottom, but I know that that's happening just like it is across society. We're moving our in custody cases. People are in jail, business as usual. If it's an out of custody, everything's being pushed into June, July, August. So we're all anticipating getting swamped down here. We have had in the beginning, particularly when other agencies were closed, we had some different things come in our door because we were always open at UNC. Actually, the sheriff at one point was closed for the first week or two there. We had one guy who came in and wanted a computer chip removed from his brain. I'm not sure what agency he normally goes to for that. My receptionist sent him over to the sheriff's office, figuring they do computer stuff all the time. They'd know how to help him. So we've had a little bit of that kind of stuff. I will say, philosophically, as we look at philosophies of things, Leon Kelly, or Dr. Kelly, who's the coroner, has been leading a lot of our COVID response in the area. I think he's done a marvelous job. And he really has a philosophy that this is education, not punishment. And so he really wants to educate the public, work with the public, whether it's these restaurants or churches or whatever businesses. And I've had the same philosophy. I'll tell you that up in Denver, they've been giving out a lot of tickets to people who don't do their social distancing or do other violations. Down here, I'm proud to say we haven't given out a single ticket. Believe me, I had a lot of pressure put on me and our office to charge, in particular, the restaurant out in Callahan. From actually, the Callahan chief of police was not interested in charging them. I asked him, how's the public accepting it there? And he said, well, Dan, the mayor's eating over at the restaurant. Two of the El Paso County deputy sheriffs are eating at the restaurant. Some of our other city council members, they actually had a city council meeting a couple weeks ago and they were fine with it. I did ask them if they had a retirement community or a old folks home, that kind of thing, and they did not. I asked actually the county attorney whether we were seeing a COVID breakout there. They didn't know. My chief out there said they didn't. But I had some real pressure from some of the people in the county. Some actually, sheriff's office got involved at one point. Some of the health department, and I made it pretty clear I'm not prosecuting restaurants. They can do, up in Castle Rock when they weren't doing the social distancing. I got to tell you, she's doing social distancing. She's kind of complying with the rules already. But in Castle Rock, because they're licensed, the health department came in and shut them down. If you have a liquor license can come in and shut you down. I don't think we needed to move to the step of making it criminal and giving her a permanent criminal record or others. She's not the only one, but it's the one that got the most focus. That's sort of a philosophical thing here. Well, I'm walking you through a little bit, and I think we have a PowerPoint, Richard, for kind of going through little civics of what is the DA, how does he interact with the community. Dave and I do see each other over the years on, we have different common issues. A lot of times when city council is passing laws that are important or not important, or well, important at Kono, they're also important in my office. And typically I'm down there providing testimony, or Dave was down there providing testimony. And we always seem to be on the same page of trying to move this community forward in a good way that is good for, when I have good, strong communities, I have low crime rates. When I have good schools, I have low crime rates. When I've got things for kids to do, and so the DA does, or our office tries to get involved in more things than just crime and punishment and the legislation, because a good community we all want to live in. I will say, as I'll digress for just a second, I guess I'm on the little square, but I bet most of you didn't know, we actually have a district attorney flag, and the Colorado flag, the U.S. flag on the other side of my desk. And for you in the older group, for the younger people, I still have one of these on my desk too. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here who recognize that. I see a smile there, Gary. And others who say, hey, isn't that in my phone? What's that? If you go to the next screen there, Richard. This is the mission of the DA's office that actually it's one of the things I put together when I came in 12 years ago, but it's to administer justice, advocate for victims, and partner with law enforcement and citizens of the community in the deterrence and prevention of crime. You'll see me kind of looking back and forth. I actually have a bigger screen off to my left, so it's easier for me to read there, but my camera's on the smaller screen. The main thing that DAs do is we administer justice. If I go back, well, 200 years ago or even 100 years ago in some states, you went to a grand jury for all criminal cases, a victim did, and if the grand jury charged the person, the victim actually went out and hired the prosecutor. And so the prosecutor literally represented the victim in that criminal case. That's how it worked when our country was formed. You still have that in some of the constitutions back east. I know Virginia, for instance, still has it in their constitution that a citizen can go to the grand jury and hire a prosecutor on that case. Some people wonder if that's constitutional anymore. As we've kind of gotten to today, now we have a public prosecutor who is hired. If I go back to east again, you'll find that the attorney general is the prosecutor, and they hire all the DAs of the state. We're on one where you elect your DAs locally, and there are 22 jurisdictions you'll see here in a minute. But those DAs then hire attorneys to work under them. But our number one mission now is to do justice. When I walk into the courtroom, when I say I represent the people of the state of Colorado, that is literal now. I do not just represent the victim. So I represent the defendant who's sitting there. I represent the victim. I represent the cops, and I represent the public. At any given case, somebody in there is probably pissed off at me. Generally, it's the defendant who's not real excited about being prosecuted. But I'll have victims that they think justice is here, and we think justice is there. And so sometimes it's the victim who's happy. I do not work for the cops. I'm independent of the cops. When I make certain filing decisions, generally we're on the same page. We have the same mission. But there are times that I have the cops who are upset that I won't file something or I did file something. And that's my job's not to please them. My job's to do justice. And then the public, you usually see it in the paper if some of if the public's upset with the way we handled a particular case. But that's where we represent everybody. I get a lot of young attorneys. We are the only ones in the courtroom who can bring charges. That's a lot of power. When you bring a charge on somebody, it can affect their reputation, their job, their business, the rest of their life. And so we try to teach these young people the right discretion of, we're not just going to willy-nilly charge people. These are serious matters and have serious effects. At the same time, as you're sitting there in the courtroom, I'm the only one who can walk in and say, I think this person's not guilty, and I'm going to dismiss the case today. Judge can't do that. Defense attorney can't do that. They can't charge him, and they can't dismiss it. And so we're teaching our young people, you should be as proud of the case you walked in and say, I think he's not guilty. I don't think he did this crime I'm dismissing, as the one that you were seeking a life sentence or previously a death penalty on. You should feel equally that you are doing the right thing, and that's the job. It is fun to work in this building because everybody here is here for the right reason, do justice, or what we say is as you go out each day, do the right thing. That's a fun environment to be in. I've got about 240 employees. I've got almost 90 attorneys at this point. Actually, we'll be over that in a couple months. I'm going to close my door. We're back. And so we are constantly making sure our people are doing the right thing. It's a fun environment. And actually for the millennials who are looking for a greater purpose in life, it's one of the things that I attract here employee-wise. The other thing, actually, Colorado Springs, I've been doing this. Actually, I was hired here in 1982 originally. And we've gone through times when if my young kids who I'm hiring want to, the nightlife, they went up to Denver and 16th Street Mall. Now that mall is not quite what it used to be, and Taylor's actually much better than it used to be. But what I find I attract here are people who like outdoors. I've got a lot of athletes here. I've got a lot of outdoors people. I actually have a lot of animal rights kind of people here. And the second group I attract are people who want to raise a family. They see this as a great area to raise a family. And so we're always talking about the good neighborhoods to move to. Actually, my assistant is about to move to a neighborhood. And we were talking today about where are the good schools, where are the good homes, where are the good property values. Those are things that are important to the people that I hire into this office. We do partner with citizens. Actually, you'll see we have more prevention programs than any DA's office, the state of Colorado, but I've got other slides on that. Richard, if you want to move us forward there. For you, or kind of history nuts, we were formed in 1876. There were actually 4 judicial districts in the state of Colorado, and each judicial district has an elected DA. The 4th judicial at that time actually went pretty much from Kansas to Utah, across the state there. Over time, you actually voted in a constitutional amendment to change that. We've gone from 4 to 22 judicial districts. They range anywhere from 1 county to, I think it's 7 up there in the 13th, which is basically a population thing. Pueblo's 1 county, Denver's 1 county. I'm 2 counties. I'm El Paso and Teller. I'm the Pikes Peak region. It wasn't that long ago that Douglas was part of ours. I think you're going to get on the ballot this fall. The 18th there, Arapahoe Douglas, is going to split because their population has just grown huge because of how much Douglas County's grown. Once they do split, we'll be the largest populated DA's office in the state of Colorado. Right now, we're the 2nd greatest population.
Dan, can I interrupt for just a minute?
Oh,
I think you, from time to time, you move your head, and it's hard for some people to hear you. Oh. If you can speak closer to whatever mic works, that would be great.
And am I better this way, or I'm better this way?
I think it probably doesn't matter. So maybe facing the camera would be best.
I'll try to figure that out. I will say I try to be sensitive. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
I think so, as long as you stay fairly close to the speaker, to the mic.
I don't know which mic it's picking up on. That's why I was curious. I try to be sensitive. What's important to Colorado Springs may not be the same that's important to Woodland Park, and so we vary based on that. Colorado Springs, actually, I usually will test you guys on how big Colorado Springs is now. Since we don't have the interactive, I normally say, well, which one's a bigger population, us or Pueblo, or us or Chicago, or us or St. Louis, or us or Miami, us or Atlanta, us or Pittsburgh. What you'll find is we're bigger than Pittsburgh by population. We're bigger than Miami. We're bigger than New Orleans. We're bigger than Minneapolis. We're bigger than St. Louis. We are 10,000 behind Atlanta. Atlanta is the number 38 largest city in the country. We are number 39. My police department is one of the most sophisticated in the country. When you watch Miami Vice, they have a smaller population. They have actually an area, my Colorado Springs Police Department covers an area 4 to 5 times the size of Miami, much less the bigger population. We have a very sophisticated agency. And a lot of people don't realize that that's where El Paso County is. And we can go to the next slide. That kind of explains the different 22 judicial districts. I will say on those judicial districts, you do find my priorities. You vote on me locally. And so you probably get a philosophy here of what reflects this community, which may be different than the Lamar DA, which may be different than the Boulder DA, and we have different priorities. Ours tends to be a law enforcement kind of way of doing things. This gives you an idea of the felony and misdemeanor courts. Actually below there is our specialty courts. And I'll have another section where we go through certain things in our office. My philosophy is to give people second chances. And we have more problem-solving courts where you get a second chance and more diversion programs than any DA's office in the state of Colorado. We really believe in giving people a second chance, try to give them a clean record that doesn't haunt them for the rest of their lives, particularly our young people. So that's why in our specialty courts, we have a DUI court, a domestic violence court, a veterans court, a recovery court. Veterans court started my first year in office. That's one that a lot of groups, including myself, were really pushing for. We opened it. I actually started getting plea bargains on it. They didn't get it open until December. We started getting plea bargains, I think, in September. And that's our veterans. We're getting back to the veterans. When we opened our veterans court, we were not the first in the country. We were the first in the state. You had some others around, but they were only petty offenses. Like Buffalo was the first. They only did petty offenses, which are really low level. We started ours off with domestic violence in it. And we were the only ones in the country taking on domestic violence. Then U.S. Senator Kerry gave out grants to your veterans court, but only if you wouldn't do domestic violence. We didn't take his grants. We were the first one in the country to allow felons into our court. Nobody else was doing that. Turned out a few years ago, they looked at the veterans courts across the country, and ours is the highest risk, most dangerous veterans court in the entire country. We have the lowest recidivism rate of any veterans court in the entire country. So now it's like a gold star court where if you're starting a mental health court or a DUI court or wherever you're doing, they come out to study ours of why is this so successful? Why are they able to take these high risk people and change their lives? So if we can do it that way, that's really what we look for. It's better for our community, and we give more second chances than anybody. You can go to the next slide there, Richard. This is all the agencies. I've got 22 law enforcement agencies that report to me, from the federal government on down to the guy up in Green Mountain Falls that's a single cop, or the guy out in Callahan that's 2 cops. And I've got, I don't know, probably 700-800 cops at CSPD. 70% of my business comes from the Colorado Springs Police Department. The El Paso County Sheriff wants to think they're real big, but the main thing the sheriff really does is he runs that jail. That's where most of his employees are. They do take care of crime outside of the city, but it pales in comparison to what I get from the Colorado Springs Police Department. We have a very good working relationship with our law enforcement here. Doesn't mean we don't have conflict sometimes, but generally it's extremely good relationship compared to anywhere else. We'll go on to the next slide for us. This is just a general idea of my office. Like I said, I'll have over 90 attorneys here in about 30 days. I'm easily the largest law firm in the Pikes Peak region. Judge Martinez, when he was the chief judge over there, it's now Will Bain, at the court used to say he was the largest law office until he heard me speak, and then he realized that I was. Most of ours are kind of mom and pop operations in terms of when I say that, I shouldn't say it that way, but most of my firms here for private counsel are smaller firms, or sort of cottage compared to like in Denver, where you can have those firms that have hundreds of attorneys. But we are the largest. Most of the kids I hire want to get about 3 to 5 years experience in the DA's office and then go into private practice or judgeships or the U.S. Attorney's Office and other things. Previous DAs have really fought to not have turnover. I've kind of embraced that's part of the life of being the DA. I know that I'm kind of an entry point for people. One of my most important jobs is hiring good people because when I hire a local kid or a kid from Missouri, I'm bringing them into our community. I really believe we're not only doing justice here, but I'm building future leaders for this community. And so my hiring and my training is very important. We do more training than any DA's office in the state of Colorado. I have a tiered training for sort of the entry level, the interim, and I have a leadership program because I'm building leaders for this office, this community, and this. As we're sitting right here right now, the elected DA in Jefferson County started his career here. The elected DA in Adams County started his career here. Steamboat started his career here. Actually, I started my career here. Some names you might know: John Suthers, when he graduated law school, started his career here. Went on, obviously, to become the Attorney General of Colorado, the U.S. Attorney for Colorado, and the Mayor of Colorado Springs. Bill Hybl, when he got out of the military, guess where he started his career? Started it here. Of course, you know Bill Hybl has gone on with El Pomar. He was a U.S. ambassador to the UN and president of the USOC. If you go out to our, actually I use this as an interactive, but I'll ask you, Dave, we'll put you on the spot. What's our airport? Who's it named after?
Our airport is named after a longtime mayor.
Yep, Bob Isaac. You want to know where he started his career? In this office.
I'm going to guess. Okay.
So that's why, in order to advance in my office through this chart you see, you have to actually be involved in the community. I don't care if it's in the vestry of your church, or it's coaching kids in sports, or it's doing the animal rights stuff. I expect you to be involved in this community because I'm building future leaders for this community. A third to half of our judicial bench came out of this office. In fact, Thursday, they're swearing in another judge who I'm losing an employee, but she's going over to be a judge over there. Will Bain, the chief judge, came out of this office. So that's an important track for us. As you're looking at the screen, probably the same as the way I'm looking at it. The left side is my county court. That's where we start misdemeanor traffic. I could tell one just so I don't get too dull here. In county court, you start with your misdemeanor traffic. When I was there back in 1982, I've been in there for a while, and so as you get better and better, and that's kind of our training ground where people can make mistakes. There's actually a crime in Colorado called pig at large, and sure enough, on my docket, I get a pig at large case. It was also cruelty to pigs. I've been in county court for a while now, so I kind of was doing better. But they teach you in law school, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, and don't ask a question too far. The first one's pretty easy to understand. The second one, maybe not so much. If I get this one, what it is it's if you've been on a farm, you have the crops. Right next to the house of the farmer is their crop, which is kind of the special crop that probably a little sweeter corn that they have. Well, sure enough, the lady who had the property out by Callahan comes out and her neighbor's pig is in her special crop eating it. She is not a happy camper, but she can see that the pig is starving. So she calls the Humane Society, and I get a cruelty to pig and pig at large charge. Well, I'm watching the jury. I put her on the stand, and the jury just loves this lady. Now this is way back, in '82. She names the pig Arnold, not real original back then, Green Acres. She moved the pig into her house. She brought in growth charts to show how the pig was doing growing. And I'm thinking, I'm going to win this case. I'm watching the jury. So we get to that point. You remember the two things in law school: don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, don't ask one too far. I said, how is Arnold today? Her response was, we ate him. The interest in my jury in that case just went, yeah. Joyce Trent, who was the then Gazette reporter, was looking for a story right about April 1st, kind of a fun story. Her interest just went, yeah. So the first time I was in the paper, and I think it was front page, but it was certainly in front of the local, I think it may have said we ate him, was my pig at large, where the jury found not guilty. So I learned my lesson: don't ask a question you don't know an answer to. The second, of course, one too far. That question is not one I needed to prove my case. That's a question too far that I thought I'd go. If you go kind of in the middle section, that's my district court, felony courts. We do more felony cases than anybody in the state of Colorado. We do more trials than anybody in the state of Colorado. My center section there, I think, are my investigators, primarily preparing cases. We take it from the cops and get them better for trial. There are some things like voter fraud that I'm required to be the original investigators on. So after every ballot, we get all those write-in ballots that are, most of them are, they go by the signature, the wrong person signed it. The most common is the husband signs the wife signs the husband, but we have to call and follow up. We're not charging them for that, but every so often we get a forgery on those. We actually prosecute more voter fraud than anybody in the state because my clerk and recorder actually reviews for those things. A lot of the others, Denver, Pueblo, they don't review for them, so they don't catch the voter fraud. I've got my, let's see, I'm trying to keep my senior DA on. That's is that my economic? Oh, I got my economic crime, my special victims. That's one there. That's my intake. That's our filing unit. Is the intake? That's where cops bring to file those 36,000 cases we get. I've got an economic crime unit. It's a very busy unit. It's as vibrant as the cops keep us in there. My special victims is where someone perps on children or rapes of adults or elderly abuse. That's my busiest unit in the office. They do a lot of trials. We take a stand on that. It's one of my priorities. My priorities, by the way, are habitual offenders. We'll give you a break the first time. We give more breaks than anybody. If you want to keep doing it, we're going to file habitual offender charges. That's actually a separate charge you put on the crime. It triples or quadruples their sentence. So although I have the most in diversion programs, I also have, last year DOC came out with their stats and there were 36 people who went to prison with their primary sentence being from habitual criminal. 18 came out of El Paso County. I'm not half the state's population. It's just, that's how we prioritize. I want to give second chances, but you want to keep repeating, I'm taking you off the street. And that's how I get a lower crime rate than Denver or Aurora or many of the other counties. But the second thing we do is the violent crime. You do a violent crime here, you're going away. You want to perp on our kids, you're much more likely to get convicted here than anywhere else in our state. Same thing with our rape cases. You see our juvenile prosecution, we handle about 2,500 cases a year there. Most of them through our diversion, which we'll get to in a minute. My admin is up in the upper corner, so you can see how we do the admin. My victims' rights area, that's driven by the legislature, and they really, every time they pass a new law of victims' rights, I have to hire new employees. So if we want to click to the next page. This kind of tells you a little bit about my office. I told you the courts in the previous one. One of the things, again, I'm very proud that we do a lot of preventive programs. Other programs, the Not One More down there at the bottom. I think it was in 2011, we had a record number of homicides. When we looked at them, 10 of them were children under the age of 1. And so we put together a coalition. Sally Clark actually was very instrumental in that also, of lots of different groups in our community. And Shaken Baby was the #1 thing we got there. Parents who were frustrated and shaking. So now if you're born in our hospitals, you have to go through a video about Shaken Baby. I don't care if it's at Fort Carson where they have a lot of babies or it's Memorial. We actually have different police responses. We have the military has some boot camps for new dads and new moms that we invented through that. Today, you almost never see a Shaken Baby in our community. And if you do, it's almost 100% of the time someone who moved here and didn't go through those programs. Highly effective program. Human trafficking, I've got prostitution used to go to the city courts, which is different. I do state law, they do city ordinances. We asked them to, we have some overlap. I said, I'd like you to not do the prostitution anymore and send them to the state court. And we opened up a human trafficking diversion program. That's a high recidivism rate. When you prosecute a prostitute, they're typically back in the street and caught again in 90 to 120 days or online anymore, which is really where they are online. We've had that now 4 or 5 years. Shannon Gerhardt, one of our judges, started that program here. We actually, when you go into that, if anybody wants to come down and see it, we've got partners in housing there for housing. We've got job training there. We've got child care there. We've actually had to have interpreters. I have some people who can't speak anything but Chinese or anything but Korean. We help them get jobs. We give them suits. We actually have a tattoo artist for free. We'll remove those tattoos that mark them as slaves or cover them. We have a medical doctor who gives free medical care, and some of the women have never had certain women medical care before. We have a dentist who gives free dental care. That program to date, we have yet to have anybody go back into prostitution. We've had 2 arrested on some other petty offense. I haven't heard of any program with an outcome like that anywhere in the country. So we're very proud of that second chance. At the same time, like I say, we're going to prosecute if you are going to keep coming back and back. So that kind of goes through. Well, I will say, let's see if we have our mediation program, the neighborhood justice up there, neighborhood justice services. I'm the only DA in the state of Colorado that has a mediation unit. And so when I've got neighbors, one neighbor's got too loud of music, so it's a noise violation, and the next neighbor, your dog ran across my yard, dog at large, and then they've knocked over my mailbox. I can prosecute each one of those all day long. When we put them into mediation, we almost never see them back again. And we're the only DA's office that does that. The cops can actually refer people to mediation. We've had landlord-tenant that we've taken care of through some mediation at times come through here. It's number one, you find it's kind of people in cul-de-sacs, but it tends to be neighbors that go through that. We're very successful in that. And I know we've used that, Dave, on some of the Kono things to try to resolve things. It works out better. It's such a successful program now. The courts, if you want a restraining order, non-domestic violence, require you to go through our mediation before you can get your restraining order. Well over 90% of the time, they never get the restraining order. So that's one we're proud of. We have our juvenile diversion where we literally meet kids at the courthouse door. We dismiss their case and put them in diversion. We make them get a job and pay the restitution. We make them meet with the victim of their crime and say, I'm sorry. It's amazing how what a huge deterrent that is. And we have them sign a contract and do other things. 85% of those kids we never see back again, and it keeps them with a totally clean record, nothing on their record at all. And I've had the military say if they've gone through diversion, we say we don't disclose diversion to anybody. If they're successful through this program, we want it off their record. By the way, in the history of this office, Bob Russell invented that juvenile diversion. It is the first juvenile diversion in the entire country. Now there isn't almost any DA's office in the state in the country that doesn't have one, but we literally invented it for the entire country. And so I've tried to carry on for those. We have some other programs there, but we'll jump ahead here. What am I doing time-wise? I don't have it. Just want to make sure I'm keeping on time. We have, I think, the most outstanding DA's office in the state of Colorado. You can sort of see the list of awards that some of my people have gotten. That Margaret Veller at the top, that was just last fall. They got out a new award this year. She was actually named, they have a brand new award that they came out with, the Sean May Award. Sean May was a prosecutor who was murdered up in Denver, still unsolved, and that was about 12 years ago. His wife wanted to give out an award for someone who stood for the values that her husband represented. And Margaret Veller was picked as the very first person to get that award in the entire state by the DAs across the state. Each time you see Prosecutor of the Year, that's what they vote on that's what the peers across the state have picked as the outstanding. By the way, Donna Billick, number 2 there, is a graduate of UCCS. I have at least 6 attorneys from UCCS. They have fabulous programs up there. The last one I hired was top 10% in his law school class. They prepare people extremely well at UCCS, and we should be very proud of them. Kim Kitchen's my number 2. We have a Colorado District Attorneys Council, which is a statewide organization every DA belongs to. They allow one position on their board from the assistant DAs, which is the number 2 in those 22 offices. Kim Kitchen was voted by to be the only assistant DA in the entire state on there currently and last year, the last 2 years in a row. But you can kind of go down. Actually, one of them down there, I think Harwood's on there. And Jeff was named the outstanding prosecutor by the DEA for the entire country. That's kind of the type office you have here. Jose Baez, if you're familiar with him, he got, who's the tight end? Henderson, or the tight end at New England, off on his murder charge. Jose Baez also had did Casey Anthony, got a lot of fame of a child abuse death. He got her off. He came to Colorado Springs about 2 years ago now. Had a murder case here, and his client was convicted in 15 minutes, guilty first-degree murder. He skedaddled town before the press came out and left his local counsel to talk to the press. I've noticed from time to time on Wikipedia, my people put on the Wikipedia site his loss. He keeps taking it off. He doesn't want anybody to know he lost us. Part of it was we have much better, that case, by the way, we had Seattle cops testify. He tore him up. He made him look silly, I thought. San Francisco cops testify. I thought he made the San Francisco cop look silly. He tried that with our sheriff's office, and he couldn't get an inch with those guys. They know what they're doing. They're well educated. They do a great job, and his client got convicted. So we can go to the next screen. That's just me bragging on our office. Now this is just for fun. Kind of break things up. Oh, no sound. Well, you see that they've got the secret agent man music playing, and you see the dog eating his sandwich and his Pepsi while they're playing the secret agent music. Now he's putting it back. Now you hear he's about to leave the door. The doorbell rung, and now he's framing the cat. I teach at the police rookie schools, and I tell them after this rookie school, you'll solve this crime. This is bragging a little bit about you get a good bang for your buck. This is actually 2018. You can see we have more felony filings than anywhere in the state of Colorado. Our misdemeanor traffic rank with anybody in the state of Colorado. My budget, 15 million. With a smaller caseload, all those others, those are the 5 major DA's offices in the state of Colorado. You can see in Denver, they're paying 27 million to their DA's office. Rapo is 22 million there. Adams, quite frankly, doesn't really compare to us. They're kind of they're sort of between the big ones and the medium ones, but 18 million. And Jefferson County is 23 million there. We do more with less here. We have more jury trials than any DA's office in the state, and that's that philosophy. We're going to go after you if you're in these certain categories. We handle more cases. My people get a lot of, actually, if I go down to women's prison, 19% of the women in prison are from El Paso County. The next highest is Denver at about 11%. I want people say, why do you have so many women? I like to say we're not gender biased. If you do a crime, we're going to apply the same philosophy to you as we are anybody else. The men, I'll probably compete with Denver on who has the most men in prison at any given moment. Now you might say, Dan, that doesn't show a lower crime rate. 2 things I'll say about the cops versus my office. I'll have people say, Dan, there was a crime last night that gives you job security. I said, no, that gives the police job security. It's their solve rate that gives me job security. We have a highly educated force. To give you an example, in our homicide cases, across the country, it's about 65% of all homicides get solved. That's kind of a bad number when you think one third of the people get away with murder. In Chicago, a couple of years ago, with all their violence, they were down between 5 and 15% 2 summers ago. So they were getting vigilante justice because there was no justice. They were just shooting each other back and forth. Here, my CSPD's typical homicide solve rate is about 90 to 92%. I've had years where my sheriff's office is 100%. We have a higher solve rate. We have a very educated law enforcement, and we have a community who's willing to step forward and help law enforcement. When you have a community that isn't willing to be witnesses, when you have a community that won't help the cops or help their neighbors or don't want to get involved, it brings down your solve rate and it makes crime increase. So we actually have a lower crime rate, but more cases. We can flip to the next screen. How am I doing time-wise here? Should I be wrapping up pretty quick, Dave?
I think you're doing just fine. Keep going.
Okay. This is our 2019. We had 36,000 cases. We collect more restitution than anybody in the state of Colorado, but we also collect the highest percentage at the same time. You know, you don't get 100% restitution, but we get the highest in the state of Colorado. And that's actually us working very closely with our court system. Our courts are very much on board of getting that restitution back. I'm hearing, you know, as we're all looking at budget cuts, the court's budget comes from the state, that they may be cutting the collection unit over in the part of the collection unit over at the courthouse, which is going to affect that rate. Victims comp, what that is it's really for personal crimes. If you're assaulted or sexually assaulted, that pays for therapy, it pays for dental care, it pays for medical, it actually pays for funerals, for homicides. It can pay for, like, if you're burglarized, they break a window or door, we can pay for doing the security in your home. But if they steal your TV, there's just not enough money in that fund to do property crime type stuff. That money actually is not taxpayer money. Everybody who gets convicted of a crime, whether it's a speeding ticket on up to a murder, has to pay into that fund. We get several hundred thousands of dollars every year, and that's what we award back to victims of crime. They don't have to have their cases solved. In fact, there's a good size percentage there that actually we're typically looking for volunteers in our victims comp board. But they know more about this community that they don't want to know, but a lot of it's unsolved crimes. I will say, by the way, one of the ways I'm able to get by on a lower budget is I have the most vibrant volunteer program of any DA's office in the state of Colorado. Gwen Stein runs that program. I actually swiped away from Focus in the Family. We have over 100 volunteers in my office, usually about 125, and they do everything that almost anybody in your office does, including preventive programs. We have some that go out into the schools to the 5th grade and teach preventative programs there. But we have a very vibrant volunteer program if anybody's looking for some volunteer stuff. We can go on to the next page. This one's just for fun. It was then paid care. Actually, Vince Snitsky is the current Colorado Springs Police Department chief, and Bill Older's our sheriff. And I put in for a body-worn camera clerk. And they were like, what do you need a body-worn camera clerk for? I said, guys, how many body-worn cameras do you think you send me these days? Because remember, we had none just a couple of years ago. And exponentially, it just went up. You see the different bars represent different years. And they said, I don't know, do you get 2,000, 3,000 from us? Well, if you look there, we get 35,000 a month from them. It's been overwhelming. It actually changes the way my DAs used to be able to read the back of a ticket and then figure out a plea bargain. Now, if particularly the lower misdemeanor cases, more cops are on a misdemeanor case scene with their body cameras going than they are on felonies. Misdemeanors tend to be ones that the cop pulls you over and gives you a ticket or goes out to domestic violence. They're there and the body cams are in the middle of the crime. Felonies are, an armed robbery, cop's not there. He goes to the bank later, so there's no reason to put on the body camera. So I get all these body cameras and all these misdemeanors, you can have 5 of them, but now instead of my attorney being able to prep a case and let's say 10 to 15 minutes per case and those 35,000, if I've got to watch a body camera for an hour, that changes my business practice. And then if you're trying to look at the other 4 at the same time, 5 hours on one misdemeanor case becomes pretty overwhelming. But it has changed the way we've done things. I guess I do have one from body one. We had a gal that came over in our first appearance center. It was a girl who was caught at a, woodsy. It's a juvenile with having alcohol was the charge. And she came with her mom. And her mom just lights into my deputy DA about how my daughter wouldn't have done this. She's not a drinker. She wouldn't have had any booze. Maybe she was there, but she shouldn't be charged with drinking underage. My attorney then said, well, the cop had a body-worn camera. The girl then puts her head down and says, Mom, let's just take the deal. So you do find body-worn cameras lead to a lot more plea bargaining because they can see what their client did and there aren't a whole lot of excuses. And again, our cops are very good cops, so it's very rare that we have bad things. We actually we did have an agreement with the defense and the judges that when the cop puts his body cam on and forgets to take it off when he goes into the bathroom or she goes into the bathroom, or when they go into 7-Eleven and they forget to turn it off and they put their credit card down so you can see their credit card, we do have to edit certain things out. And let's go to the next screen. And now we're down to questions. I hope I kept within your time here. You're on mute, Dave.
You. I was following my CEO's direction. Now you can hear me. Thanks. We just a reminder, if you have a question, raise your hand if you're on camera. If you aren't on camera, if you'll send me a text either through the program itself, through Zoom itself, or to my cell phone 719-337-5838. And I don't see any hands yet or any questions, so I'm going to ask you, Dan, a question about, has coronavirus made a difference in what you do and how you do? And then I'll call on Flannery in just a minute.
Yeah, some of the people were on earlier, but just to kind of repeat, yeah, we've been affected by coronavirus. We are considered an essential, so we've been having people over in courts every single day. We have 2 types of, like I said, I do state charges, so I do the more serious traffic. I do all the misdemeanors, shoplifting and domestic violence are the primaries, and drunk driving. And then we have all the felonies. You can only do a felony in the state courts. If you're in jail, we're trying to do business as usual and try to move people through the system, if you will, and take them to their next destination from the county jail. If you're out of jail, we've been postponing since March into June, July, August, so I'm going to get overwhelmed. I was wanting to actually put in for some of the CARES money. that two trillion that they passed. Turned out we got a letter back saying we were the first ones here and put in for it. They granted, I put in for about $750,000. I'm hiring extra attorneys to take care of that bulk. I actually am bringing in a lot of law students who can actually practice in the courts. We did an orientation for some of them today. I've got about, normally we'll carry 8 to 10, and we're probably close to 20. It's a cheaper way to be able to handle cases. So we're preparing for this big glut. We have not had any jury trials since March. It's getting backed up. I've got 800 set in June. I've got defense attorneys who don't want to go to trial. My public defender, we sent over a list of the judge wants in June to at least start with a couple of experimental jury trials to see how we can handle them, socially spread them out in the jury, make sure everybody's safe as we do the jury trial. The public defender sent me 3 cases they thought they could try in June out of those 800. We sent over at least 60 that met some criteria the judge wanted of how many days, what type of days, that kind of stuff. They have yet to get back to us on any one of those 60 that they can be ready for trial. So that's one thing that's got us worried is the big glut of cases we have. We're hoping to start with a more serious case and not just something that's going to waste people's time. And they are going to spread jurors throughout the courtroom. We've had Department of Health look over our plan and they said this is a safe way of doing it. I think you're going to see those plastic screens up around witness boxes. Jurors will actually be seated back in the area where normally the public would sit. So few will be in the jury box, but they'll be spread throughout the room. You do by law have to see the defendant's face and the witness's face. That's why we're putting plexiglass around the witness because they can't wear a mask. Same thing will come up with that. I'm actually trying to buy right now some clear masks to also get around some of those issues. So we're trying to work ahead with all that. Prosecution-wise, I mentioned earlier, I've taken a stand that with Dr. Kelly that this is education, not crime, that we want to do this through. So he's gone out and talked to certain churches, make sure there's social distancing. I've taken the position, I'm not charging kids playing basketball. I'm not charging restaurants. Maybe with a restaurant, the state has so much power over them before I have to make them a criminal. They can take their license, they can take their liquor license. You saw the governor shut down that business and just like that in Castle Rock, whereas he hasn't touched my one out. And I got one in Divide and one in Callion, but they were social distancing. They were trying to do it the right way, even though they were early. And I made it very clear on the record, I'm not going to prosecute those cases, which there were some people in the county that didn't appreciate my position, and some at the health department, actually some of the sheriff's office. Those earlier I mentioned, a couple sheriff's deputies have been meeting pretty regularly on Callion already. But so that's sort of the way we're handling it. Can I answer some of your question, Dave?
That did a good job. I appreciate it. Flannery Burdick has a question for you now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving us this time today. So I have 2 questions, if that's allowed. The first one is, you mentioned the sophistication of the local CSPD. And I did have a question. Recently, it's come to community attention that the tracking and reporting of officer-involved shootings is lacking here when you compare it to other neighboring cities, and definitely some of the cities you mentioned, comparing them in levels of sophistication. And I was just wondering if you've had the chance to read the locally presented law enforcement accountability project report on that. It's kind of a really short PowerPoint, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, and if not, if you would be willing to review it if I could get it to you.
What group put that out?
It's a coalition of organizations. I believe the NAACP is a part of it. I know there are researchers at some of the local universities here who are a part of it. And I think
I'm pretty sure I've seen at least some draft things. I don't know that I saw the PowerPoint, but so feel free to send that over to me. But I've seen some of their information and some of their data.
Okay.
I was just talking actually with Michael Allen this morning about officer-involved shootings and how we handle those. It has changed over the years here and changed across the state. There are 2 things I got to tell you overriding when you go into those. Number one is we want to get the right answer. So we want to do a thorough enough investigation and take the amount of time to get the right answer. Number two, though, is we have to have the trust of the community. If I come to the right answer and the community doesn't trust it, it doesn't matter what the answer is at that point. So we very much work on getting the trust of the community. I can tell you that CSPD and the Sheriff's Office have been doing quite a bit of outreach to different communities of interest across this, our county, and I've been involved in some of that also.
Yeah, I have as well actually been involved in some of that,
Yeah.
and I do see some movement on it. I think that in terms of trust, transparency is super important. So that's why I'm kind of asking this question: is tracking, being like super open with the data, I think can aid trust. So that's kind of why I'm hitting that point. But I
Sure.
do appreciate what you're saying. My second question.
Wait. I'll finish answering this. It used to be in our jurisdiction that the DA's office went out and did the investigation. So I actually rolled out in the middle of the night or whenever it was. My team went out and we investigated the law enforcement agency, and we made the decision on prosecution. The state of Colorado, about 3 years ago, maybe 4, passed a law that they wanted other police offices to do those investigations, and they specifically wrote DAs out of it. So my office is not allowed to be involved in the investigation level anymore. We just do the prosecution. They also required 3-4 years ago that every single officer involved shooting, I am required to write a report to the public, have it on my website that anybody can go and read on what our decision was and why we arrived at that decision. I've actually put out, because we've been doing this for a long time, I put out reports, I think going back to like 2002 or 2000, maybe 2000. So you can see every officer involved shooting that's happened in this community for probably the last 2 decades, what we decided on the case, how we decided it.
Yeah.
So we want to be very transparent. There, in the Devon Bailey's case, there became some controversy about the sheriff's office doing the investigation of the police. That was a state law, and that was a reform law that was put in a few years ago. That's what they required, is that you do it like that.
Absolutely.
I've advocated for some time that they needed to have more than just CSPD and the sheriff on that unit. I think they now have the option of bringing in CBI. They also have found to make it a more diverse unit. But it is, I agree with you 100%. If we're not transparent, if we're not open, you don't see what happened, then it's a problem with the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my second question is just about, it's probably simpler. It's about how many people of color you have working in your office currently, and if you have made any focused efforts to increase this number.
Sure. Actually, I have 2. One is also gender. People ask me about the gender. Today, actually, well, maybe a trivia back to you. Who makes more money, men or women in their 20s and 30s? Finer.
Who makes more money in general, or in your office?
In general.
It would depend on the industry.
It's a changing society. Today, women graduate high school at a higher rate than men. Today, women are more likely in college than men. The post-college academic work is flooded with women today, and that's true in law schools. There are more women in law school than there are men. My office actually has probably about a 50-50 men versus women. My number 2 is a woman. My chiefs are my next level. 2 out of 3 are women. My seniors are the next level, and 6 out of 12 are women. I actually worked under. I'm
really more interested in.
Well, I'll get to that. I know. Okay. I'm going to be in our office anyway, whether you like it or not. I worked under Jeannie Smith. Jeannie, I was her number 2, and she was the first woman elected DA, I think, in the state of Colorado, but certainly in the 4th Judicial District. She may have, I can't remember Sarah's last name, tied Sarah, who was out of Alamosa. In terms of my attorneys, the biggest logjam I have is the law schools. Currently, I think African Americans make up about 13% of the population across the United States, and probably a little less than that here in Colorado. My law schools have 3% African American. And so when people ask me, are you reflecting exactly what society is? The logjam for me is the law schools. We go out, we recruit very heavily. I have a number of African American. Actually, I mentioned earlier, Sam Burney is becoming a judge Thursday. She's been one of my senior managers. She is African American. I have to look at our numbers, but I know I'm higher than the law school average. I've been generally pretty close to what my community is in terms of percentage for African American attorneys. I actually have quite a bit of diversity. I've got in terms of religion too. I've got a number of Muslim personnel and attorneys. I've got a number of Hispanic attorneys. Although Hispanic's a harder number to calculate in the criminal justice system. But those 3% who come out of law school, it is a competitive area because I got to tell you, I'm not the only one recruiting good attorneys and good attorneys of various backgrounds because we want that in our office. But so are the 16th Street Mall offices, where I can offer 60, 70,000 starting a year. They're offering 150 plus a year. So it's an extremely competitive market. We do very well with it right now. If you want, I can try to, if you want to call me later, I can try to count the numbers and give you the exact numbers in terms of what we have.
Thank you.
I do know percentage-wise, we're above the law school percentage. We're pretty close to our community percentage.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, but I have a question for you, of course, Dan.
Yep.
And that is, could you, you mentioned a number of cases when you were going through your PowerPoint. I wonder if you would, if there are some particular cases that you didn't mention that you'd like to tell us about. I wonder if there are some cases that you wish had been resolved differently. I realize I may be treading on some thin ice here, so don't, I know you won't, but I'm not asking you to do anything that would violate your ethics. So could you care to comment on any of what I've asked?
Well, I'll talk about a couple of fun ones. I guess, I grew up here. I actually was born in Minnesota. I went to Mitchell High School. I'm a product of District 11. Married my wife. I got 2 boys. One's in Boston now, one's in Dallas. In my career, I moved up through the ranks of the office, starting in county court. One of my funnest jobs was working with the narcotics cops. I did that for about 3+ years. And literally, I'm getting called out in the middle of the night to give plea bargains to people to roll on their suppliers and stuff. One fun one I had there was, actually had one guy who's a big biker guy. And I'm in the room trying to get him to roll over, and I came back and I said, sorry guys, he doesn't want to cooperate. And he's pretty tough. He said, well, ain't that tough, Dan? After you told him how many years he's facing and everything else, he's in throwing up in the trash can right now. But we had one where it used to be, you had the Cloud 9 room down here on Pueblo Avenue. Had a lot of cocaine dealing going out of there. We had a cop who went down there and one night, and he was trying to buy some dope from a dealer. And he runs into a guy and he says, hey, I'd like to buy $100 worth of crack cocaine. And the guy looks at him and he says, you look familiar. The cop says, well, I've got one of those faces that a lot of people mix me up with other people. And he goes, okay, what do you want again? He says, $100 worth of crack. So he gives him the crack, he gives him the $100, and the cop says, you're busted. That's when the dope dealer says, that's right, you're the cop who busted me last week. So, to me, that's a message to anybody who runs a business. You got to know what your customer base is. It's important. Probably, well, actually, the Barrett case I just had up in Woodland Park. That one actually got worldwide attention. We had a list of people that Frazee wanted to kill that we were able to introduce into evidence of about 6 people. Although it was put in some of it into court, it was mainly the witnesses. I was actually on the list too, but I think I was a lower priority for him on the 6, 7 people he had on there. But that got leaked actually to the Daily Mail in London. Is where that got leaked out into the public. We had Australia had reporters there watching it. That was kind of worldwide. I'm very proud that the way we resolved that case. I'm not so proud about the plea bargain I gave. As I've said, the deal with the devil there. She deserved a heck of a lot more time than what she got out of the case, but it broke the case. The plea bargain she actually got, the cops were adamant they wanted me to give her immunity. And I said she needs to face something for this. She needs to go to prison for some time. She's serving 3 years, but that is not adequate. I can tell you that she knew the crime was coming down. She could have forewarned the victim, and we would have never had that murder. Interestingly, that's not a crime. If you're sitting in a car when somebody else is doing a drive-by shooting and you don't forewarn them beforehand, or you don't cooperate and tell the cops later, that's not a crime. That's a moral issue, and I think she is going to be held to a high morality standard in her community and across this country by not saving that person's life. But I have other cases that murders could have been stopped if the person with the information came forward. That's not a crime in Colorado. Actually, you can't, it's not a crime to do an inaction. You have to do some sort of action. But that's one, Dave, that I'm not so proud of what I did with her. And it's actually one that I still have. Wake up in the middle of the night saying, thinking to myself, how could I have handled her better?
It's a tough, even for a bystander, it's obviously that was a tough call.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how you resolve it any differently personally, but actually we didn't have another, unless you wanted to say more, Dan, I've
Actually,
got another question.
Jeannie Smith faced a similar issue. For those of you who lived here a long time, you had the Bonicelli's wife was murdered years ago. Another guy named Phillips' wife was murdered years ago. We're talking decades. When she was DA, somebody came forward and said, I can solve that for you. Well, we had the hitman. We had the Phillips was still alive, who hired the hitman to kill his wife. And we had the guy who arranged, the middleman who arranged for that hit. She ended up giving a pass to Phillips and the hitman in order to get the guy who did the middle ground stuff. So you had to make decisions again of what are you going to do. Now, quite frankly, Phillips at that point was, you knew he didn't have long to live. He was in late stages of cancer, I think it was, at the time. But again, she had to make a deal with the devil in order to sell something. That one's actually kind of an interesting case. In the Bonicelli case, if you want to look it up, it's the Pearl of Allah. If you look that up, you'll see the whole story. But Bonicelli's owned the Pearl of Allah, which is like one of the largest pearls in the world. I think it looks kind of ugly. It's a huge thing. It was actually in a safe somewhere. Well, when Bonicelli's wife died, it went to him and his family inherited it. When we were able to prove he actually hired the murderer to do it, he can't gain from that. So all of a sudden the pearl went back to her side of the family. And so there was a huge court case over who owned this Pearl of Allah, which is worth millions of dollars. And that just got resolved a few years ago after that got solved. So there's a couple kind of interesting cases over time.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I think Mike Chavez has a question for us.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dan. Actually, I just wanted to just say a couple of things. I've been following the DA's office since we moved here in 1990, and there's been several DAs, and they've done good jobs. But I think you've done an outstanding job. The DA's office is key in working with the police and helping to not necessarily stem crime, but make sure that that criminals are taken off the street. And I've been very impressed. And you and I talked and know each other well. You've done a great job. I know you do a lot of internship and training programs, and I just want to thank you for the great work you've done. I know a lot of times DAs get knocked for some of the things that they have to decide. But anyway, it's good to be sad to see you go, but I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work and dedication.
Well, you're very kind, Mike. Thank you for those kind words, and say hi to your family and lovely wife. You guys are so committed to the community. It's always outstanding to see someone like you and your family really care about this community, and even across the state. You guys are very active in helping people across the state of Colorado, and probably nationally at this point too, in some of the things you're doing. We have a fantastic group down here, and it's really the benefit of just getting the right people, hiring the right people who are very committed to doing the right thing.
We have another question too. I think I'm going to ask it. I know that Miss Rose has been having some connection difficulties. She was trying to get on earlier and it took us a while to get on.
I can ask.
Question.
Oh, there we go.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't having connection difficulty, actually. I got on last time just fine, and this time it was just very interesting to me that I had to wait like 20 minutes. However, that wasn't my question. So
you missed the best part of the lecture. It was a life-changing experience. The rest of these people are going to go change their lives after that.
I suppose it was. But my question is, well, thank you for this time. And regarding the answer to your, not this comment, but the previous question, would you be willing to speak publicly in support of getting the state law repealed that allows law enforcement agencies within the same county to investigate one another? I'm really asking this because you have great power as like a legal expert and as a member of the Colorado District Attorney's Council.
You might want to, John Southers has actually put out some pretty good information on this, but there's a lot going on out there. I know that Denver has a citizens board, and I got to tell you, my people are required to do justice. We're required to do the right thing. When you put up those citizens boards, the first thing you'll notice is they have to have a public defender, a DA, a this, a that, because the theory is those people have a bias, and they're going to come to that board with those biases, and so they all get to hear the same thing. I don't think that's what you really want to set up through what's being proposed with some of these. If you look at the Denver, they'll actually have a majority minority report in terms of the vote count and how they do things. They are actually more forgiving of cops over time than law enforcement agencies are. You'll find that those boards, cops will fire people for ethical violations. Those boards will bring them back in. Or integrity violations, they'll get fired. And if you can just look in the paper in Denver and see what's happened in the Denver Sheriff's Office, where some sheriffs there got fired for some violence they did or integrity things, that those boards brought back into the sheriff's office. So you do find actually the law enforcement are harder on their own people, and they should be, quite frankly. My job is to keep the cops within the, apply the same standards to them as anybody else. And like I say, I think we have a lot of transparency. Now I think you can, I have no problems with tinkering with it. I got to tell you, you're not going to go anywhere in this state, though, that you're not going to find sort of cross-pollination, if you will. There's no question that I've got some sheriffs who used to work at CSPD and CSPD that worked at sheriffs. You want to bring in Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI? Well, guess who they're going to bring down here? They're going to bring 3 people that used to work for the Colorado Springs Police Department. You want to go to other agencies? I mean, cops do move around. In the end, I think all you can try to set up systems that have high integrity, high transparency, people can see, sort of like we put out every single report that you can read. I can tell you philosophically, when I started, I think Bob Russell took every officer involved shooting to a grand jury. Barney Ayupa didn't take any. When John Suthers came in, he said, you know, if it's clear cut one way or the other, we should charge or not, let's just do it. But if it's if it's a gray area, we'll let the grand jury and the citizens decide. That philosophy has been here ever since, and that's one that I've adhered to also. Now the grand jury are 12 citizens. If you want to have you could take every case to the grand jury. None of them have a particular bias or background. They got that jury notice. If any of you have ever done jury duty, they got that notice just like you did. Most of them come in and didn't notice the word grand. They thought they were there for 1 year, for 1 day. It's actually a 1-year commitment. They have diverse backgrounds, diverse communities that they come from. And actually, when I've asked them at the end of the 1 year, I'll say, what would you like the public to know? They consistently will say, I want the public to know we wanted to do the right thing. We really wanted to get to the truth and have the appropriate outcome. So that is a totally unbiased body that is randomly picked through this community.
Okay, I mean, I definitely do appreciate that answer, and I also appreciate the fact that you're saying that they all coincide, because I think that kind of ties back to your problem with the community having trust problems when it comes to law enforcement and the district attorney's office and et cetera, because perception-wise, right, we're not in that position to know who's in charge of what, who talks to what, who's friends with what, who's covering for what, and who's hard on who. So we don't know that. So I think that's another thing where transparency and accountability will really help gain the community and law enforcement's trust even more once we can start to differentiate that. I didn't even bring up the citizens board, but that makes sense. I think on our side, which I'm sure you've been following, we really want that because we were asking for outside law enforcement to do the investigation, not really like Colorado, because I understand, again, it's all intertwined, but I do want a little bit more of a clear answer. You're able to give that to me. Would you be willing to publicly state what you pretty much just said here and be an advocate for that, you know, regarding your position? Again, you're in a position with a lot of power. And if you're saying to us that, you know, you do understand that how the lines can be blurred, and, you know, only 4 years ago, this law was changed that now law enforcement agencies can investigate each other within the same county. If you think that it could work better how it was previously, would you be an advocate? Would you be willing to be an advocate for that?
I'm not going to speculate on what possibilities are out there. I'd like to see what plan somebody puts together and what their ideas are before I can give you a concrete answer on that. Again, I
Okay.
think we've built a lot of transparency into the system. And like I say, you can review every single decision we've come up with, and then judge for yourself whether you think it's appropriate.
No, absolutely. So, sorry, last follow-up. Now that you're saying, and you kind of mentioned previously, would you be willing to have these conversations outside of just like this public Zoom call to where, because again, a lot of the problem has been, throughout the months that people have been working to try to get things changed and handled how we see, is right, which again, we don't know the ins and outs of what you guys do. There has been a lack of accessibility to people like you, to people like the police chief, to people like the mayor. We haven't had access to even have these conversations. It's not like I'm just coming here to say, oh, I think it'd be cool if we did this. Like, we have research and statistics and numbers and cities that this has worked in that mirror our statistics and mirror our situations that we're going through. And as a community, it's more than just the accountability and the transparency. We want to feel heard and seen as well. And I think that there has been a lack of that, speaking from personal experience. So would you be willing to follow up on these conversations, whether it be via email or we do a separate Zoom or with like a small group of people to where we can present to you, even if it's only an hour of your time, like, hey, this is what we did. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds
Sure.
great.
Absolutely. I do more of that than what you think. And it's nice when Dave gets groups together like this, because if a lot of times, it's the groups that reach out, I guess, to me and say, would you be willing to speak? I don't think I've ever turned down a speaking engagement. The things I'm telling you are not things, are the same things I've told other community groups that have had me talk or ask about the question, that have asked me on the record. It's not necessarily the most exciting subject that you'll see a lot of coverage that people want to watch. I've given different interviews to different TVs and the Gazette or the press on different on these topics, but on TV they want a 30-second slot, and you heard all the how much can you put into 30 seconds. But yes, I'm more than happy. You got me on film here too, from what I've heard.
Okay. So do we just email you? Like, how do we? I just need a concrete
sure.
like.
Okay. District attorney. You want to write this down? District attorney at elpasoco.com, which stands for El Paso County. So it's at ELPASOCO, elpasoco.com.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You betcha.
I think we've kept you a bit longer than I promised, Dan. I'll ask if there's one more question, if that's okay with you. Okay, any questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. It's good to see you too. I'll just remind everyone that Kono exists to help individuals and neighborhoods solve problems. We are big advocates for a robust public process. It's one of the reasons we're doing these sorts of talks. We want people to understand how the system works so that they can be more involved in it. And so that's part of our empowering of neighborhoods and individuals, part of our making sure there's a robust public process. I know Dan has the same sort of values actually when it comes to that. Go ahead.
How many of you guessed those are reins, a halter and reins on the wall behind me?
I didn't guess that at all. What's that from?
Actually, there's a picture in there on me on horseback up in Frosty Park, which I think is closed to the public now because of the trout they found up there. That's our horse, from our horse.
All right, very good.
Okay.
All right, so just a reminder then that this is will be on the Kono or available through the Kono website shortly. If you have any questions, I know that we thought there were a couple communications problems. I will stay on for a few minutes, or you can call me at 337-5838. I was trying to let on Miss Rose for about 20 minutes, but every time I did it, I got another request from the same person to be admitted to the meeting, and I kept responding to those. All right, thank you very much. Our next Zoom meeting will be a week from today, I believe, at 10. And that will be with the, actually with the retired minister of First Christian Church, Gay Hadler, but he's talking to us not about religion, but about how to use Facebook Live for holding a large meeting. I hope you'll join us. Thank you again, Dan. I'm grateful for your time. Thank you, Richard, for your help with the technical difficulties we were having earlier, and I'll stay on, but the meeting is now adjourned. Have a great day.
Did you want me to stand for a minute or leave?
No, you can go, Dan. We're just going to talk the technical stuff. Jarosneka, did I say your name correctly again?
Yes.
Okay. Every time that you got on into the waiting room, I would admit you. There's a button on my side that allows me to admit anyone who's there. I pressed that. But I had, at one point, I had 4 or 5 such requests from someone with your same name. So all these were listed in order. And it made me worry that maybe we were getting some sort of Zoom bombing, because that happened to us once early on in this process. I don't know what was going on with your phone, but it looked like it was repeating the request to be admitted to the neighborhood and into the meeting, and I would press admit, but and I'd see that I'm not sure what that was called, what the machine calls it, but you were joining. It would say that number was joining, that person was joining, but until that last time, you never got on board.
Okay. For my end, because I've been doing Zoom, since what do we call this? Not quarantine, stay at home time.
Yes.
I've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, and basically I have screenshots on my end too, and it just kept saying that. I'm going to tell you right now. It said, "Please wait. The meeting host will let you in soon. We're waiting for the meeting host to allow you in." It just literally, I have screenshots over like the 20 minutes.
Sure.
It just kept. So maybe every time I took a screenshot, it resent it. I don't know. But I was just literally like waiting in the idle stages. And then that's when I asked Flannery, I was like, were you able to get in? Because it's not working. And she was like, he said that yours isn't working. And I was like, okay, let me switch to my iPad to see if it maybe is my phone, but it didn't say, it literally just said, please wait. I guess I could put it in.
Were you only using the iPad and your phone?
Yeah, literally. I only used the iPad this last time. Now that I'm in, I only requested on the iPad one time, and then it let me straight in, like after like a minute.
So it sounds like in some fashion, your phone was repeating the request to be admitted, and because I'm not sure I can show you the screenshots because I'm not that adept, but and I didn't take screenshots of any of this, but. It might be on our recording, but there were often 3 or 4 listings of someone, and it looked like a different machine because each one had a different color for that request.
That's really weird.
And I don't know who could resolve. I certainly can't resolve that for you.
Yeah, your phone doesn't let you request more than once. Like, if that makes sense. Like on the app, you can only like click it once and then you just wait. But for the future, I think what I'll do is I'll just get on from my iPad like to begin with.
Okay.
So we can just eliminate the whole phone. But the last one I was in with the police chief, I did it from my phone and it worked fine. So I don't know. And I was just on a Zoom call yesterday and it worked fine. So I don't know what's going on, but
I don't either. Well, I'm sorry you had to wait.
It's okay.
But it wasn't anything I could do anything about. If you run into a similar problem at another meeting of ours, you've got my cell phone, 337-5838. Just give me a call. Just send me a text, actually.
Okay.
And I'll see what we can do to resolve that. But it does sound like your iPad works better, at least for this time.
This is going to be posted on Kono's website, so I could just go watch like the first half on the website.
You should be. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That works.
If you can see Richard on on the screen. He's nodding his head also, so it'll be there.
Yes, I can see him.
Okay.
I have a
Well,
question.
thanks for
for you.
participating.
And I have a question for you.
Yes.
Did you say last time we talked that you were an advocacy training graduate?
Yes.
Have you talked to Keyshawn Cooks yet of our staff?
I have not. I've really only last been in communication with Julie like right before she left. I haven't met with Keyshawn at all yet.
You mind
No.
if he follows up with you, because he's trying to do a little bit more in-depth follow-up of graduates and what they're doing.
Okay.
And is it okay if he contacts you or?
Yeah, of course.
I don't have your email address. Can you email me? Just say to Richard, and you can just email me at information@cscono.org with some contact info.
Yes. You said info at what? I'm sorry.
It's information@cscono.org. So cscono.org.
You have to spell out information.
Oh, information's a whole word. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. 1 second here. And I'll just put follow up, and my signature is my info.
Great.
So.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, he can follow up with me. But that was it. So next time I'll just get on my iPad, but that was all I had to. I appreciate you guys.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Well, again, I'm sorry you had any difficulty at all.
It's okay. I can just watch the other half on the website later.
Okay, very good.
Take
All right.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anything else we needed to talk about?
No, that went really well.
I thought it did too. I don't know why the feedback was the problem, because Paul and I rehearsed that yesterday
Well,
with no problem at all.
the microphone was on somewhere, so, but that's.
Yeah, well, it was. I hadn't done anything different, so it either refused to turn itself off automatically or something. Anyway, it wasn't a problem yesterday with no changes.
No, I think it went really well. Hey, can I get the key back for the office?
How quickly do you need it?
Not like immediately, but I want to this week, early this week sometime.
Okay, I was planning on. I haven't been able to go in yet, so I was planning on going in tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning, perhaps. If I brought it back by after that, would that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, well, hang on. Yeah, I have a conference call. Is there a way we can meet somewhere, or you can drop it?
I can bring it over, or I can meet you at the office, whichever works better for you.
I've got a call, so maybe if you could just drop it on that stump again.
Okay, I'll do that.
Great.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. Another good one.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I think he loves to talk. He loves the opportunity to do these sorts of things, but you look at the metrics, all the things he's talking about, it's an outstanding district attorney's office.
Yeah, it really is. And he's a good prosecutor. He walks the walk, walks the talk.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. That's right. He's the real deal, I think.
Yeah.
Although I know people who don't like him, but who I respect actually, but I've never had anything but the most professional and actually the most cordial relationship with him. So I'm glad you've met him before. I'm sure there will be times when you or Keyshawn or somebody needs to know. And I was glad to see all three staff members on. That's wonderful. Somebody needs to talk with his staff members. He had me talk with the assistant DA for economic crimes when we saw that one of the members of a neighborhood of an HOA
You're
was
recording this,
used.
by the way.
I'm sorry?
I think you're recording.
Yeah, probably ought not to. um,